If you'd asked me when I was still binging, what were the benefits or the payoffs to my binging, I would have been absolutely adamant with you that there were none. I hated binging. I hated what it was doing to me physically, mentally, socially. There didn't seem to be an area of my life that wasn't negatively affected by this problem. In hindsight, I think I also didn't want to even look at what potential benefits there might be, because I think I probably would have been afraid that if I'd looked and found these benefits, that would have somehow made it harder to stop. That actually what I needed was just to focus on how bad it was and how much I wanted to stop, and then that would be the thing that would help me recover. Because binge eating seems so irrational. It doesn't seem to make sense why you keep doing this behaviour when you feel like it is harming you so much. However, if we don't recognise and acknowledge some of the ways that binge eating is either serving us or trying to serve us, it's going to be quite hard to figure out what we might need in these situations in order to be able to let binge eating go. We'll just keep saying to ourselves, we just have to make ourselves stop doing it. We just need more willpower and more discipline. But if we look at it from a slightly different angle, we might see something we didn't see before. So before I start, I am going to just mention restriction. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but if you are trying to eat in a calorie deficit or you are cutting out large groups of foods, binging can be a response that comes from a very primal part of the brain that is trying to protect you against restriction. So that's the first benefit for a lot of people that binge eating is trying to offer, is your brain sees the restriction as a threat to survival, and so it's triggering a binge. But this video is more about the emotional and the existential. So the first benefit that binging had for me was that it allowed me to temporarily check out of life. Life sometimes felt dark, heavy, and I also felt dark and heavy and full of shame. And sometimes it was like, I just don't want to be conscious in my life for a bit. And so food and binging provided a way to temporarily check out. It gave me a respite and a break from having to be with my thoughts, from having to sit with these feelings of disappointment and shame about my life and about this binging problem itself. Sometimes I use binge eating to check out from the fact that I had a binge eating problem, and I hated that was the problem I had in life. Because for me, it wasn't like binge eating was dealing with this bigger problem. It felt like binge eating was the big problem in my life. I also, with hindsight, relate to the idea of turning emotional pain into physical pain in order to deal with it. So if we have feelings, I was feeling shame, all kinds of things I was feeling, depressed, that I didn't know what to do with, by binging and making myself physically hurt and feel physically unwell, now I had something more tangible to focus on. Like the discomfort, rather than being an emotional discomfort, the physical discomfort took over. Almost like how self-harm might. And this wasn't about punishment. I don't really relate to using food as punishment, but just not knowing what to do with this agitation and tension that I felt, these feelings that at the time I couldn't even name. I also think it's very natural that as human beings, we sometimes just want to check out, zone out of life for a bit. And so there are other distractions that we can use for that. Or productivity can be another one. But none of them seem to work as well as food. So in order to move through this, there was a couple of areas that needed to shift for me. One was the shame piece, because for as long as I felt this shame about who I was, I felt like having a binge eating problem said something about who I was. And I didn't want to be that person. And so being able to stay with whatever that was just felt impossible. I wanted to escape myself. So through self-compassion and through connecting with others and hearing the stories of others, it starts to chip away at that shame, to realize that even though I have a binge eating problem, that doesn't have to define who I am. It doesn't mean that I can't live in alignment with my values, even though this bit over here, this binge eating problem, seems to go against what I value. The other piece with checking out is the desire, especially when the desire to check out feels very compulsive, is often because there is a resistance and a rejection to life as it is in this moment. We don't want to be here, we don't want to experience this. And so recognizing that actually when I'm willing to live life on life's terms, which basically means not constantly resisting everything that happens. If we really watch our minds, I've been doing this recently, like noticing how much my mind complains and judges. Oh, she shouldn't have said that thing the way they did. Oh, it's raining again. I can't believe it's raining again. We should be getting our summertime. My body should be different. My emotional experience should be different. All these ways that we think life should be different and then it's not. That's painful, that clash and that conflict. And that's what can make life feel so unbearable to be in. And so this is a work in progress, but it's this idea, certainly for me anyway, this commitment to going, okay, I see the benefits of trying to accept the things that are outside of my control and allow life and people to be as they are. And if I can just do that 10% more than I was before, then things like urges to binge diminish. Like I can tolerate this life because I don't believe it should be different. And here's an interesting payoff. And it's a payoff to actually having a binge eating problem rather than just having a binge itself. And so for me, having this problem with binge eating gave me a path to salvation, by which I mean, like, this is the problem that I need to solve. And if I was no longer a binge eater, then I would be the version of myself that I feel like I was always supposed to be. I felt like it was just the binge eating that was blocking me from showing up the way that I wanted to show up in the world. Binge eating can become a convenient reason for not doing things that you imagine you would be doing if you didn't have a binge eating problem. So I thought, okay, when I get rid of this binge eating problem, I can genuinely remember thinking, if I can solve this problem, then I could do anything. I couldn't imagine facing a bigger hurdle in life than this. So I thought life would feel easy without binge eating. Now, don't get me wrong, I am so grateful that I've recovered. And what it gave me was not actually everything being easier, but it gave me more freedom because I was very trapped in this problem. Now, freedom is a double-edged sword because then you're free and you think, what am I supposed to be doing with my time and energy now? I guess I also thought if I wasn't thinking about food all the time, then gosh, imagine the things that my mind is going to be able to come up with. Think of the things I'm going to achieve and do. But the problem with that kind of thinking, and certainly the way it was for me, is I thought that based on what I was able to do, that would then change how I felt about myself. And so at first, when I recover, I'm throwing everything into my career, into what I do now, because I'm like, okay, well, this is my purpose now, if recovering from binge eating isn't. And I remember having this incredible opportunity to speak at this conference in front of 300 people. And a couple of days beforehand, it was like it's going to sound obvious, but sometimes you realize something and you really feel the truth of it. It was like that for me. I had this realization. I thought, oh, nothing you do, no level or metric of measuring of accomplishment is actually going to make you feel any differently about yourself. And that realization came with a bit of a crushing feeling. I've got, well, then how do I like feel better, just better about myself? And it's going to sound very cliche. I apologize. I'm already wincing before I say it. But it is the realization that you're enough as you are and that there's nothing you have to do to prove your worth. You don't have to strive in order to feel better about yourself, because that's only temporary anyway. When you realize actually there's nothing to strive for, like this is it, and finding a way to like make your peace with that, have compassion for this human being that you are that's having a messy, difficult, challenging experience in life. Then when you look at what you might be able to do or achieve or ways that you want to grow, and when you accept yourself for this fallible human being that you are, you can still want to try to do things and achieve things and see how far you might be able to take something, but you can just be in the process of it as opposed to outcome driven. I've definitely fallen into this trap before with YouTube and thinking, gosh, if I only had a certain number of views or a certain number of subscribers, then I'm like, well, then what? About a year and a half ago, I had a video that did really well. It was the eating in the evening video. It's got over 300,000 views. And I was so excited and I got so invested in view count for the next couple of months that I lost that feeling of meaningfulness and connection that is so important to me as part of the process of making these videos. I felt like I was making videos for the algorithm as opposed to just making videos and saying the things that really I felt in my heart I wanted to say and that might benefit people who hear it. The point I'm making is about this idea of letting go, that there is a destination place where everything is suddenly going to feel okay. It's realizing that everything already is, even if it's messy and painful and difficult sometimes, and then from that place, that energy, if you like, you're not trying to change yourself from a place of shame. I'm so ashamed about who I am. I have to change myself so that I can no longer be ashamed. It's bringing in that self-compassion piece, reducing the shame now, and then considering this idea of how it is you want to continue growing as a person, because the work's never done. And the third benefit of binge eating, or certainly one for me that some of you will relate to, some of you might not, is this idea of it helping with transitions. And by transitions, I mean moving from one thing to the next, but it normally involves like a switch of mode. So we have different modes. You will be different, a bit different with your family than you are with your colleagues, than you are with your friends, or that you are at the doctors, but we have different versions of ourselves that come up. And so all these different versions of ourselves exist in our mind. And this is very human, because as human beings, we socially adapt. But when we have to switch from one mode to another mode, it's like switching tracks in your brain. And so it was a case for me, I'd finish work, and then in order to switch from work mode to home mode, I would need to eat. And not just a snack, I would feel like it felt compulsive. It felt like, it didn't feel like hunger. It felt like I needed this to like punctuate different parts of my day. And the place I felt it the most, and I still have this feeling now really strongly, is going from being with people to on my own. So that could be I had a friend come and stay with me for the weekend and then they might leave. And I felt this feeling that I still get now, and there isn't even a word in the English language for it. It is a deeply uncomfortable feeling. And it's not about being on my own. I'm okay being on my own and in my own company. It's the switch. And it can also happen when I've been with people and then I leave people and then I'm on my own. Now you could say, but it could be that when you're with people, you couldn't binge. And so therefore, the minute you're on your own, that's why you wanted to binge. And I don't think that's it, because I have experienced that. I've experienced that feeling of being with people, wanting to binge. I can't wait for them to go so I can binge, or I leave early so I can binge. This is not the same thing. I sometimes think of it, it's almost like trying to create a biochemical shift in the body through eating food. Maybe it's something to do with your blood sugar, whatever it is. That there is something that helps with those switches and using food to do that. So I might still eat in transitions now, but it isn't going to look bingey. And sometimes I won't eat. Sometimes I will be very conscious of this feeling. When I'm very conscious of it and I'm expecting it, then it feels more bearable than when it happens or it takes me by surprise. So I could meet somebody for a nice lunch. We spend 3 hours having lunch. And then I come home, even though I've had lunch, again, this transition creates this uncomfortable feeling whereby my brain will still sometimes go like, oh, food. Need to have something to eat. Now, if this transitional eating is a problem for you, it could look like it's happening several times a day. It could be you come out of a meeting and just that transition from in meeting to out of meeting, you reach for food. Travel is a type of transitional eating as well. You're going from one place to the other. Chances are there's some kind of mode switch between, reaching for the food. And then, of course, the brain makes an association with eating in the car. It's a private place. Car eating, I think, is a big one for those of us who struggle with food. When I'm working with people and they're thinking about the payoffs to their binge eating, they often believe that what they need is to find another thing that works as well as food works in that situation. And then they can't. So if they see themselves as an emotional eater, they might think, I just need something else that I could do or have instead of eating in those situations. And there's a place for that. Sometimes if we're looking to food to soothe, we might need something to help us soothe. And I think there's a personal growth edge for many of us about how we can let go of resisting and fighting with life. How much of turning to food is about not even necessarily trying to deal with life, but trying to deal with what's going on inside your own mind, whether it's your critical voice or whether it's your emotions or just a sense of chronic shame. And those situations, do we really need to be finding something else to help us shut that out? Or could the work be about creating a better relationship with ourselves? The work being making our minds a friendlier place to be. If you're afraid of being alone in your own mind, that fear is going to control you. It's understandable, so there's no shame in this. This is such a human thing. It's weird when you think about it that we become afraid of our own minds and our own emotions, yet that's the reality for many of us. So if you are interested in kind of this side of things, you might want to check out my second YouTube channel, which is called The Conscious Growth Therapist. I'll pop a couple of videos up at the end. Because for some people, their binging just vanishes when they stop restricting, and I say that's all it takes because I appreciate restriction can feel as compulsive as binging. It can be very hard to let go of. But for some of us, food just ties into so many layers of meaning about who we are and how we feel about life. And if you relate to that, I get it. I think I feel the same. And with this idea that the work is never done, that can feel like a disappointment and a relief at the same time. And I hope you can find some relief in that idea, because it means you don't have to wait until you've fixed everything about yourself to start having a more comfortable experience of being yourself. Anyway, I hope this was thought-provoking and helpful, and I will see you on the next video.